go on, it's only £150 for a kick drum, and then this is £300 and £300, £200, £200, and then it all adds up until you hit your addictive rock bottom and get... Not many people have access to gear like this. It's expensive, it takes up a lot of space, it's cumbersome, and it takes time to use. So my friend Cam and I said, wouldn't it be nice if we took all of these cumbersome, expensive, time-consuming toys and put them into a single plug-in so anyone could use them anytime, anywhere. We started with some super fat drums, which you can pick up for a tenner from the crowhillcompany.com. After releasing this, we thought we'd come back into the studio to share with you how we went about making these super fat drums that we call circuit drums, and to demonstrate that sound design isn't really about theory, it's about happy accidents. Okay. I'm going to have a blister later. Why don't I just start with what made me think that this was going to be a really easy project. This thing up here is totally idiot proof. So I'm just going to trigger it. Yeah. That looks like we need to sort out the division there. It's one of the problems of having a big old case is getting leads long enough. Oh, that's fairly easy, isn't it?
Yeah, that works.
Dirty! What I did, as I'm doing here, is overloaded the Lombardi, which we'll come back to and talk about more in a minute. It's a really weird desk. For some reason, you can't clip it. Well, you kind of can, but it's always kind of quite attractive.
That's the producer face. You have to go.
I'm going to put it into this noise oscillator. So what is a noise oscillator? Is it just something that randomly creates like all the pitches?
Yes, so it's usually just white noise. I was told once that early Moog noise oscillators, when they were trying to make them cheaper to make the Rogue,
right.
They were just getting chips and running lighters underneath them and just breaking chips because like, oh, we have the parts anyways, that's cheaper. And in some of them, like modern day synths, the noise is actually just a wave sample.
Oh, really?
So even on some Moogs, you can hear where it goes like the break,
right.
where it's just looping badly.
So basically what we need to do is we need to go into an amplifier of sorts. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is trigger the ADSR. And you can see it's doing stuff. And then what we've got is the CV then controlling this. So that'd be kind of an open hi-hat. And then final stage is taking the output of that, going into there, out there, into there. And just filtering. So that's, I guess, how I'd make a
hi-hat.
So, snares.
For snares and claps, I actually used a Juno.
Okay.
I cheated because you're far better with Frank and your rack system, and I'm far better pretending I'm an engineer. So I made a bunch of sounds and I treated them like I would acoustic sounds.
Okay.
And that makes a big difference. If I'm bringing out transients or body or just even bugging on like a channel strip and going snare setting when it's just noise will make it sound more like a snare.
Okay.
So that's far more what I sort of honed in on.
Okay. So should we plug that in and then have a listen to that? Yeah. Why is the Juno 6 so brilliant?
I think it's the simplicity of it.
Yeah.
That you can just sort of walk up to it and go and be like, oh, it's a synth, it's doing synth stuff. There's no menu diving or like shortcuts or...
And they've lasted, haven't they? Because this is going to be how old? This doesn't have any MIDI on it.
No, it's pre-MIDI, so it's 82, 83.
So how did you use it to make drums? Because it looks like a synth to me.
I didn't just want to grab white noise digitally, even though it is a digital oscillator. I wanted to grab from an instrument. So on Juno, you can switch off all the oscillators and start playing with noise, which is the theme of the day. You can attribute that to an envelope. Yeah. Oh, I've got arpeggios on. Oh. So you can go to the hi-hat stuff you were doing, filter it. I made more claps than you did, and I think it's just because I'm of the Tiesto generation, whereas it's all EDM. So I was really just using this to capture that kind of clappy snare decay. I did add a little bit of tone behind it sometimes, and I would occasionally like filter it, but and layer that kind of clicky sound over the noise. But really, it was the processing I did afterwards.
I think that a lot of people feel that this technology is very different from this technology. And all this is a series of modules that are just hardwired. And where you get very different like reactions to signals, say with the ADSR compared to the maths here, is because they're made by different people. Whereas this is all, well, it's not actual patch cables inside, it's a circuit board. Yeah. But it's the same principle, but everything's designed and calibrated for the oscillators, for the filters.
Yeah. You know, the thing that I always fall down your rack, it's quite easy to end up in silence because you've just patched something wrong. Whereas this, all being normaled, as in all connected already, it's a good to go machine. And that way you can get what you want out of it faster, and then you can experiment the other end. My side very much being computers, so being able to take that noise and then put it in the box and mess with it there, right? Which is how I made a bunch.
So analog source, but
digital manipulation.
Okay. When you're making samples, it's absolutely fine to sample anything you like for your own personal use.
Yes.
But sampling samples or other people's music,
big no-no.
For commercial samples.
Definite no-no.
Yeah.
So it's our samples loaded into this. Really cool new sampler, KO2 by T Engineering. We're using this as a playback device today. You can load your own samples into it. The first thing I do when I get a nice toy like this is delete all the factory content without even listening to it. Really offensive to do it, but I don't want to be tempted. But this is the Blue Peter device of the day. It was just, this is far more attractive than a laptop. So even though we started with that, I took this and I made a snare and a clap from it. Okay. So the clap's the easiest one to understand because I took the noise and I just modulated it. So it's the same noise, it's just going da-da-da-da, which doesn't sound like anything, but when you speed it up 500 times, exact same noise.
It's like the flam of people clapping, right?
So that's the clap on my favorite kit, the Demonic kit. Also took the same noise, put it into Pro Tools, my DAW of choice, everyone's least favorite, and I used a bunch of SSL channel strip plugins that are all based for snares to process the noise.
Wow.
And that's just taking noise, transient designer, compression, just adding more and more plugins, eventually adding a sort of synth beep like I did earlier, and you end up with something that sounds kind of like a snare.
Yeah.
But everything's born purely from that same noise burst. For all the cymbals, I tried to be retro geeky and use FM synthesis. So that's frequency modulation. So it's where instead of layering two oscillators together, like two different pitches, you only hear one oscillator, but the other oscillator is controlling the pitch of the first one.
So what I'm going to do is basically take a basic sine wave. There we go. Super nice and fat. Just turn it down for a sec. So what I'm going to do is take this and oscillate this with this. So you're not going to hear this. So we're going out there, and instead of going into the mixer thing up there, we're going into control pitch. Now if I do that with a low frequency oscillator, which runs a lot slower, you'll hear what it's doing in slow motion. Okay. I just burnt myself. This is a braided cable, and I just would not recommend. I'm gonna have a blister later. But if I speed that up, so here you're kind of making a couple of different harmonics there. Now if I change the shape, you'll find that this will frequency modulate into something different.
So I have examples of how I did the ride cymbal for that kit. So one oscillator horrifically just sounds like this.
Right.
Which you could sort of get some overtones, cymbally, something from, but it's just a really discordant sound. And then another oscillator is making a bell sound, but we never hear that one. That really vintage bell sound modulates the weird chord.
Okay.
And when that happens, you get...
Wow.
And that makes no sense, and there's no processing happening, it's just using one synth to modulate another.
Okay.
And you hear elements of both of them, but it's not just, you're not just putting them on top of each other, you're making one affect the other.
Okay. I find this quite difficult to use, the DFAM. I'd love to see what you did maybe to create a tom or...
My question is, where's the output on this? Presumably that. Because, yeah, that was easy.
So this has got basically some normalized components within it, hasn't it?
Yeah, so it's semi-modular, which just means that you don't actually have to patch anything in. This is just the output. Things like this bottom row of the sequencer will run to the amplitude, the top row will run to pitch. Both the oscillators sort of mix together. You don't actually have to plug anything in if you don't want to. It's probably my favorite drum machine ever because of that, and because the sequencer's built in. You can be really vain like me and buy a little kit to make the small knobs look like the big knobs. Because bigger is always better. Got somewhere.
So this Lombardi, I don't know what the date is, but it's basically got 4 Binson-style Echo Recs inside. I'm not going to turn those on to demonstrate them now. What I like about it is it's just not something you see that often, and I think what's so much fun, particularly when doing something like this project, the circuit drums, is to be able to use something that's rare to create something bespoke sounding. So if you give me a little bit more of that stuff. Overload it. Poor little Italian desk. Sounds pretty good, doesn't it? So let's take the saturate. I love it when it runs out of power too. The thing I think with so much modern stuff is it just doesn't sound very nice when you treat it badly. But you can hear the Binsons turning around.
I thought it was seagulls.
Why electric drums? Why not acoustic drums? Why not samples? Why not digital?
The whole point of this, right? It's like a happy accident machine.
Yeah.
It's a unit that neither of us have used in years that isn't very well marked out. Looks beautiful, but you can't really read it. And we wouldn't have got to that place if we'd planned to get to that place.
Mm-hmm. Well, the problem is it lures you in because it's like, come on, this is only £150. You get £150 for a kick drum, that's nothing. And then £300, £300, £200, and it all adds up until you have your addictive rock bottom and buy a double-decker Colossus. If you want to get your hands on these super fat drums, go along to thecrowhillcompany.com where you can pick up circuit drums for £10. And if there was a lot of stuff that you didn't get your head round in this video, I've made another video about modular synthesis, everything you need to know in just around 10 minutes. Also, we've created this cheat sheet, or rather blag sheet, to guide you through the maze that is modular. Everything linked in the video description down below.